up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, as you can tell from the title, is a February wrap-up. I didn't have the best reading month in February. It was full of some hits and some misses. I actually DNF'd 2 books this month, which is unfortunate. It doesn't really happen very often, but I think I mentioned this in one of my previous videos. As I've gotten older, I've gotten pretty good about knowing when I'm not really enjoying a book and learning to put it down pretty early. So I DNF'd 2 and then I read 3. So anything that you read in February that you absolutely loved, I want to know about it because I want my March to be a better reading month. I'm probably going to do like a book haul, book mail video at some point soon. I went out of my way purposefully thrifting books that have been on my TBR for a really long time to make sure that March was a good reading month because I don't want another disappointing month. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book I read this month was a DNF, and that was Come With Me by Helen Schulman. It's kind of funny the way this book came to me. It was a Christmas gift for my mom originally, but she had only put the title of the book that she wanted. She didn't put the author, and I ended up getting the wrong one. But then when this came in the mail, I was like, wait, this actually sounds like something that I would read. So the blurb is really cool. Like the concept of this book, amazing. The execution, I mean, I DNF'd it, so obviously. So the blurb says, Amy Reed works part-time as a PR person for a tech startup, run by her college roommate's 19-year-old son in Palo Alto. Donnie is a baby genius, a junior at Stanford in his spare time. His play for fortune is an algorithm that may allow people access to their multiverses, all the planes on which their alternative life choices can be played out simultaneously, to see how the decisions they've made have shaped their lives. Donnie wants Amy to be his guinea pig, and even as she questions his theories and motives, Amy finds herself unable to resist the lure of the roads not taken. Who would she be if she had made different choices, loved different people? Where would she be now? So that sounds awesome. Like, that sounds incredible. It's kind of got like a sci-fi bent to it. I would have loved this if it had just been done better. I was like halfway through. The author still had not gotten to the thick of the plot. Like, the meat and potatoes was like missing from the plate that is this book. Like, if that makes any sense. It kept going on and on and on about Amy's day-to-day life as a mom, and like there's something to be said for character development, like that's great, but it just wasn't going anywhere. So it could have been amazing, like it should have been incredible if it had just, the execution had been better. It ended up just feeling like a drama about this privileged family living in Palo Alto rather than about this really cool concept of an algorithm that can show you like all the different outcomes of your life if you had taken different paths. Like, I wonder about that all the time. Like, if I had gone to this university instead of this one, or if I had gone out on that date instead of like turning the guy down. Like, the concept is incredible, but unfortunately the execution just wasn't there. The next book, thankfully, was excellent. It was one that I finished. It was James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. I really want to read more of his stuff. I know Giovanni's Room is supposed to be amazing. I have read The Fire Next Time. So this was so well written that a lot of it did go a little bit over my head, and there were definitely some references in here that I had to Google. I had to look them up. I was like, wait, who is he talking about? What is he talking about? I've never heard of that book. But yes, absolutely fascinating. If you don't know, it's basically it was written in 1955, or it was published in 1955, and it's a collection of essays about basically what it means to be a black man in America and abroad, because he does go abroad at one point. It says his impassioned essays on life in Harlem, the protest novel, movies, and African Americans abroad are as powerful today as when they were first written. He talks a lot about the American dream and then the American ideal. He says the American ideal is that everyone should be as much alike as possible, and I feel like that's totally true. I mean, inherently as humans, we want to fit in because we're like tribe minded. There's so many like little nuggets in here of truths. I don't know what the right word is, maybe unfortunate that so much of this is still prevalent and like relevant and feels very of the moment and timely, even though it was written in 1955, because we're still dealing with, well, I shouldn't say we, but African Americans, Black Americans, they're still dealing with the same issues. So yes, it's incredibly well written. He was obviously a very well-read man. His perspective just really infuses the whole thing. Like, you really feel like you're inside his mind and kind of living his life and seeing the world through his experience, so I really liked that one. I don't have a rating for this one because I usually don't rate nonfiction. It's like, how can I rate his experiences? But obviously just for like the writing style and how well it's written, it's a 5 out of 5. The next one was a DNF. I don't have it, I already returned it to the library. It is Chuck Palahniuk's most recent book, which is The Invention of Sound. I think it came out in, yeah, my notes say it came out in 2020, so fairly recent. It was under 300 pages, I think it was like 240 pages, pretty short. The blurb sounded like it was kind of promising. It was following the main character, this grieving father, and he was basically on the hunt for his daughter's kidnapper / possible killer. It got very dark very quickly, as most Palahniuk novels do. Unfortunately, I really didn't like this one. It felt, again, kind of like it wasn't really going anywhere. I didn't really care much for the characters. It just gets kind of weird, which again is typical of Palahniuk, but like he ends up hiring an escort who kind of looks like what he assumes his daughter would look like now. And I didn't care about the characters, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put it down. So I don't have a rating for that one. The next book that I read for February was one that I finished, and that is How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Sheree Jones. This takes place mostly in 1984 in Barbados. It says, Lala's grandmother Wilma tells the story of the one-armed sister. It's a cautionary tale about what happens to girls who disobey their mothers and go into the Baxter's tunnels. When she's grown, Lala lives on the beach with her husband Aiden, a petty criminal with endless charisma, whose thwarted burglary of one of the beach mansions sets off a chain of events with terrible consequences. A gunshot no one was meant to witness. A new mother whose baby is found lifeless on the beach. A woman torn between two worlds and incapacitated by grief. And two men driven into the tunnels by desperation and greed, who attempt a crime that will risk their freedom and their lives. So I really liked this one for the most part. It's darker and a little bit more intense and pretty sad. I wasn't really prepared for that. I was thinking it was gonna be a little bit more lighthearted, just because I assumed. It's an intense one. You do kind of have to have a strong stomach for it. Lots of violence in here, violence against women in particular. In my notes I put trigger warnings for domestic abuse, infanticide, sexual assault, murder, gun violence, and then just overall violence against women. It's very intense. Please don't read it unless you're prepared to read about those things. It is a little bit slow paced, so for that reason I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, the last book that I have to review is 1984 by George Orwell. I cannot express how important this book is. It talks so much about privacy and surveillance and the lack thereof basically in modern society. I know some people will be put off because, for example, if you're like me, I think it was my sophomore year of high school, we had to read Animal Farm by George Orwell. I was not a big fan of that one. It's a satire. Satires really aren't my thing. This one I feel like is so much more, it's better. It's just better. I feel genuinely like this should be required reading, especially since we're all living in the digital age. It's so important to learn about privacy in a way that's not boring because it's like fictionalized. The blurb says, it's the story of one man's nightmare odyssey through a world ruled by warring states and a power structure that controls not only information but also individual thought and memory. Winston Smith joins a covert brotherhood and pursues a forbidden love affair against the cold gray backdrop of the Republic of Oceania, only to become a hunted enemy of the state and of Big Brother. So if you've ever heard that term Big Brother and not really known what it means or what it's talking about, it is a reference to this book. It's basically the all-seeing eye. So kind of like how your phone, just like the phone that I'm filming on right now, has multiple cameras, has a microphone, it's recording everything that you type, it's hearing everything that you say. We're basically living in 1984, which is pretty crazy to think about. There are so many truths in here. It's one of those books that just unfortunately keeps getting more and more accurate and more true as we kind of lose our privacy as it relates to everything that we post online and the internet. So definitely recommend. It's a 5 out of 5, a must read. Seriously, run, don't walk to the bookstore, get yourself a copy. That's it guys, you've made it to the end. Thanks for watching. Like I said, give me some recommendations below so my March reading month can be a little bit better. I'll see you next time. Bye. Guillermo, come here. Guillermo.
You want to say hi? No.